as we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. Body scrunching your face closed up. As we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. Body scrunching your face closed up. The bass goes boom as we enter. Scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. Shaking the room from the back to the center. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. Shaking the room from the back to the center. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes as we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes as we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes. Your face closed up cause the bass goes. Scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes as we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes as we enter. Shaking the room from the back to the center. Making you move to the track, you surrender. You're scrunching your face closed up cause the bass goes.
These mortals have awakened the gods of old. We rise from our slumber to reveal our true power. Focus fire. To strike.
Let's go, buddy. Back again for some more battle tactics and war strategies. Get into World War I, the fucking prelude. Let's do it. Pull this shit up. I mean, it's already pulled up. I just gotta do the thing. You know, the thing and the stuff. Fuck, it's been a minute since I've done this. Fucking forgetting how to run my own stream here. What the hell is this? Fucking Alzheimer's having. Anyways, World War I, the prelude. Let's fucking get into it. Gotta make this stream a little short. Hate to say it, but that's just the way it's gotta be. For much of the 19th century, the major European powers maintained a tenuous balance of power known as the Concert of Europe. After 1848, this was challenged by Britain's withdrawal into the so-called Splendid Isolation. The decline of the Ottoman Empire, new imperialism, and the rise of Prussia under Otto von Bismarck. Victory in 1870 through 1871 of the Franco-Prussian War allowed Bismarck to consolidate a German empire. Post-1871, the primary aim of the French was to avenge this defeat. But by the early 1900s, this had switched to the expansion of the French colonial empire. German economic and industrial strength continued to expand rapidly post-1871. Backed by Wilhelm II, Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz sought to use this growth to build an imperial German navy that could compete with the British Royal Navy. This policy was based on the work of U.S. naval author Alfred Thayer Mahan, who argued that possession of the Blue Water Navy was vital for global power projection. Tirpitz had his books translated into German, while Wilhelm made them required reading for his advisors and senior military personnel. However, it was also an emotional decision. Driven by Wilhelm's simultaneous admiration for Royal Navy and desire to surpass it, Bismarck thought that the British would not interfere in Europe as long as its maritime supremacy remained secure. But his dismissal in 1890 led to a change in policy, and the Anglo-German naval arms race began. These are not necessarily going to be lined up, but that's okay. It's just a slideshow. It is what it is. World War I images. Let's go. Despite the vast sums spent by Tirpitz, the launch of the HMS Dreadnought in 1906 gave the British a technological advantage. Ultimately, the race diverted huge resources into creating a German navy large enough to antagonize Britain, but not defeat it. In 1911, Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann Hollweg, interesting name, acknowledged defeat, leading to the Rüstungswende, or armaments turning point, when he switched expenditure from the Navy to the Army. This decision was not driven by a reduction in political tendencies, but by German concern over Russia's quick recovery from its defeat in the Russo-Japanese War and subsequent 1905 Russian Revolution. Yeah, the Japanese were just winning shit back to back. Like, after they beat the Mongols, they had, like, big dick syndrome, and were just like, we're not getting taken by anybody, fuck you, until we stepped in World War II. But that's to come later, right? That's to come later. Economic reforms led a significant post-1908 expansion of railways and transportation infrastructure, partially in its western border regions. Since Germany and Austria-Hungary relied on faster mobilization to compensate for their numerical inferiority compared to Russia, The threat posed by the closing of this gap was more important than competing with the Royal Navy. After Germany expanded its standing army by 170,000 troops in 1913, France extended compulsory military service from 2 to 3 years. Similar measures were taken by the Balkan powers and Italy, which led to an increased expenditure by the Ottomans in Austria-Hungary. Absolute figures are difficult to calculate due to differences in categorizing expenditure, since they often omit civilian infrastructure projects like railways, which had logistical importance and military use. It is known, however, that from 1908 to 1913, the military spending by 6 major European powers increased by over 50% in real terms. Yep, shit started getting wild. Everybody was like, oh fuck, their army's bigger than ours. What do we do? Gotta increase the army. Increase the army size for the coming conflict that evidently nobody knew was gonna happen, but everybody, you should have seen it coming, right? The moment the arms race started, should have kind of seen it coming. Hindsight's always 20/20, though, ain't it a bitch? The years before 1914 were marked by a series of crises in the Balkans, as other powers sought to benefit from the Ottoman decline. While Pan-Slavic and Orthodox Russia considered itself the protector of Serbia and other Slav states, they preferred the strategically vital Bosporus Straits to be controlled by a weak Ottoman government rather than an ambitious Slav power like Bulgaria. Russia had ambitions in northeastern Anatolia, while its clients had overlapping claims in the Balkans. These competing interests divided Russian policymakers and added to regional instability. Yup, them Russians. Austrian statesmen viewed the Balkans as essential for the continued existence of their empire and saw Serbian expansion as a direct threat. In 1908 and 1909, Bosnian crisis began when Austria annexed the former Ottoman territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which it had occupied since 1878. Timed to coincide with the Bulgarian declaration of independence from the Ottoman Empire, this unilateral action was denounced by the European powers, but accepted as there was no consensus on how to resolve the situation. Some historians see this as a significant escalation, ending any chance of Austria cooperating with Russia in the Balkans, while also damaging diplomatic relations between Serbia and Italy. Tensions increased after 1911 through 1912 Italo-Turkish War, demonstrated Ottoman weaknesses and led to the formation of the Balkan League, an alliance of Serbia, Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Greece. The League quickly overran most of the Ottomans' territory in the Balkans during 1912 and 1913's First Balkan War, much to the surprise of outside observers. The Serbian capture of ports on the Adriatic resulted in partial Austrian mobilization, starting on the 21st of November 1912, including units along the Russian border in Galicia. The Russian government decided not to mobilize in response, unprepared to precipitate a war. The great powers sought to reassert control through 1913. Treaty of London, which had created an independent Albania, while enlarging the territories of Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece. However, disputes between the victors sparked the 33-day Second Balkan War, when Bulgaria attacked Serbia and Greece on the 16th of June, 1913. It was defeated, losing most of Macedonia to Serbia and Greece, and southern Dobruja to Romania. The result was that even countries which benefited from the Balkan Wars, such as Serbia and Greece, felt cheated of their rightful gains, while for Austria it demonstrated the apparent indifference with which other powers viewed their concerns, including Germany. This complex mix of resentment, nationalism, and insecurity helps explain why the pre-1914 Balkans became known as the powder keg of Europe. We'll get into that when we get into a little bit more of World War I. This is going to be a pretty detailed little series of like 11 episodes. So be ready for that. On the 28th of June, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, heir presumptive to Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria, visited Sarajevo, the capital of the recently annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. Jekto Popovic, Gavrilo Princip, Nadaljko Kabrinovic, Trifko Gabrez, Vaso Kubrilovic, Bosnian Serbs, and Mohammed Mehmedbasik from the Bosniaks community. From the movement known as Young Bosnia, took up positions along the Archduke's motorcycle route to assassinate him. Supplied with arms by extremists within the Serbian Black Hand intelligence organization, they hoped his death would free Bosnia from Austrian rule. Oops. Kabrinovic threw a grenade at the Archduke's car and injured 2 of his aides. The other assassins were also unsuccessful. An hour later, as Ferdinand was returning from visiting the injured officers in the hospital, his car took a wrong turn into a street where Gavrilo Princip was standing. He fired 2 pistol shots, fatally wounding Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Mega oof. According to historian Zbigniew Zeman in Vienna, quote, the event almost failed to make any impression whatsoever. On the 28th and 29th of June, the crowds listened to music and drank wine as if nothing happened, end quote. Nevertheless, the impact of the murder to the heir of the throne was significant, and has been described by historian Christopher Clark as a 9/11 effect, a terrorist event charged with historic meaning, transforming the political chemistry of Vienna. Austro-Hungarian authorities encouraged subsequent anti-Serb riots in Sarajevo. Violent actions against ethnic Serbs were also organized outside Sarajevo and other cities in Austro-Hungarian-controlled Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Slovenia. Austro-Hungarian authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina imprisoned approximately 5,500 prominent Serbs, 700 to 2,200 of whom died in prison. A further 460 Serbs were sentenced to death. A predominantly Bosniak special militia known as the Schutzkorps were established and carried out the persecution of the Serbs. Archduke couldn't clutch up massive L. Indeed, Mason, massive L. Archduke couldn't clutch up. Man, should have been strapped. Honestly. Like, after visiting your aides that were in the hospital, you think dude would have been fucking strapped. But he wasn't. He was not strapped at all. There was nothing going on there. And the car took a wrong turn. Yeah, I bet the driver took that turn on purpose. Because the shots only killed Ferdinand and his wife, not the driver. The assassination initiated the July crisis, a month of diplomatic maneuvering between Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, France, and Britain. Believing that Serbian intelligence helped organize Franz Ferdinand's murder, Austrian officials wanted to use the opportunity to end their interference in Bosnia and saw war as the best way of achieving this. However, the Foreign Ministry had no solid proof of Serbian involvement. On the 23rd of July, Austria delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, listing 10 demands made intentionally unacceptable to provide an excuse for starting hostilities. That's just good old-fashioned coercion. Serbia ordered a general mobilization on the 25th of July, but accepted all the terms, except for those empowering Austrian representatives to suppress subversive elements, quote-unquote, inside Serbia, and take part in the investigation and trial of Serbians linked to the assassination. Claiming this amounted to rejection, Austria broke off diplomatic relations and ordered partial mobilization the next day. On the 28th of July, they declared war on Serbia and began shelling Belgrade. Russia ordered general mobilization in support of Serbia on the 30th of July. And so it begins. You're gonna have to go to bed, got SATs tomorrow. Right on. Well, get some sleep. Do well on those SATs. Sleep well. Have great dreams. And do well on the SATs. They're not hard. They're really not. Anxious to ensure backing from the SPD political opposition by presenting Russia as the aggressor, German Chancellor Bethmann Hollweg delayed the commencement of war preparations until the 31st of July. That afternoon, the Russian government were handed a note requiring them to cease all war measures against Germany and Austria-Hungary within 12 hours. A further German demand for neutrality was refused by the French, who ordered general mobilization but delayed declaring war. The German General Staff had long assumed they faced war on two fronts. The Schlieffen Plan envisaged using 80% of the army to defeat France, then switching to Russia. Since this required them to move quickly, mobilization orders were issued that afternoon. Once the German ultimatum to Russia expired on the morning of the 1st of August, the two countries were at war. At a meeting on the 29th of July, the British cabinet had narrowly decided its obligations to Belgium under the 1839 Treaty of London did not require it to oppose a German invasion with military force. However, Prime Minister Asquith and his senior cabinet ministers were already committed to supporting France. Of course they were. The Royal Navy had been mobilized because they were competing with Germany in the arms race. Their Navy was like, yeah, this is our opportunity to stomp them. This is our opportunity, buddy. And public opinion was strongly in favor of intervention. Of course it fucking was. All the propaganda, man. Holy shit. Early on, they were like, we can't let Germany get powerful, otherwise you'll all be speaking German. Oh my goodness. On the 31st of July, Britain sent notes to Germany and France asking them to respect Belgian neutrality. France pledged to do so, but Germany did not reply. Aware of German plans to attack through Belgium, France Commander-in-Chief Joseph Joffre asked his government for permission to cross the border and preempt such a move. To avoid violating Belgian neutrality, he was told any advance could come only after German invasion. Which, if they had gone and defended Belgium on Belgium's border, well, might have been a little bit of a different story, but France kind of put themselves in a shitty position, didn't they? Man, look at where France is located on a map. And then you'll see why I said that. Anyways, instead, the French cabinet ordered its army to withdraw 10 kilometers behind German frontier to avoid provoking war. On the 2nd of August, Germany occupied Luxembourg and exchanged fire with French units when German patrols entered French territory. On the 3rd of August, they declared war on France and demanded free passage across Belgium, which was refused. Early on the morning of the 4th of August, the Germans invaded, and Albert I of Belgium called for assistance under the Treaty of London. Britain sent Germany an ultimatum demanding they withdraw from Belgium. When this expired at midnight without a response, the two empires were at war. So now Germany is fighting a war with Russia and the rest of the fucking world, basically. And to preempt some of the details about the war, the total number of military and civilian casualties in World War I was about 40 million. Estimates range from about 15 to 22 million deaths, and about 23 million wounded military personnel, ranking it among the deadliest conflicts in human history. The total number of deaths include between 9 and 11 million military personnel, with an estimated civilian death toll of about 6 to 13 million. Fucking wild. Of the 60 million European military personnel who were mobilized from 1914 to 1918, an estimated 8 million were killed, 7 million were permanently disabled, and 15 million were seriously injured. Germany lost 15.1% of its active male population. Austria-Hungary lost 17.1%, and France lost 10.5%. Somebody clip this and send it to whatever podcast. Brian has accurate stats. France mobilized 7.8 million men, of which 1.4 million died and 3.2 million were injured. Approximately 15,000 deployed men sustained gruesome facial injuries, causing social stigma and marginalization. They were called the Gueules Casses, broken faces. In Germany, civilian deaths were 474,000, higher than in peacetime, due in large part to food shortages and malnutrition that had weakened disease resistance. These excess deaths are estimated as 271,000 in 1918, plus another 71,000 in the first half of 1919, when the blockade was still in effect. Starvation caused by famine killed approximately 100,000 people in Lebanon. Diseases flourished in the chaotic wartime conditions. In 1914 alone, loose-borne epidemic typhus killed 200,000 in Serbia. Starting in early 1918, a major influenza epidemic known as the Spanish flu spread across the world and accelerated by the movement of large numbers of soldiers, often crammed together in camps and transport ships with poor sanitation. The Spanish flu killed at least 17 to 25 million people, including an estimated 2.64 million Europeans and as many as 675,000 Americans. Between 1915 and 1926, an epidemic of encephalitis lethargica affected nearly 5 million people worldwide. 8 million equines, mostly horses, donkeys, and mules, or equines. I don't know how to say their scientific name. 8 million horses, donkeys, and mules died, 3/4 of them from extreme conditions they worked in. Germany was the first to successfully deploy chemical weapons during the Second Battle of Ypres, April to May 1915. After German scientists under the direction of Fritz Haber at Kaiser Wilhelm Institute developed a method to weaponize chlorine. The use of chemical weapons had been sanctioned by the Germans' high command to force Allied soldiers out of their entrenched positions, complementing rather than supplanting more lethal conventional weapons. Chemical weapons were deployed by all major belligerents throughout the war, inflicting approximately 1.3 million casualties, of which about 90,000 were fatal. The use of chemical weapons in warfare was a direct violation of the 1899 Hague Declaration concerning asphyxiating gases and the 1907 Hague Convention on Land Warfare, which prohibited their use. Ain't it a bitch? War crimes don't exist. It's fucking war. If the enemy's gonna do it, and it's effective, well, shit. I don't see a problem with adopting effective measures. Just saying. The ethnic cleansing of the Ottoman Empire's Armenian population, including mass deportations and executions during the final years of the Ottoman Empire, is considered genocide. The Ottomans carried out an organized and systematic massacres of the Armenian population at the beginning of the war and manipulated acts of Armenian resistance by portraying them as rebellious to justify further extermination. In early 1915, several Armenians volunteered to join Russian forces, and the Ottoman government used this as a pretext to issue the Tachir Law, Law on Deportation, which authorized the deportation of Armenians from the empire's eastern provinces to Syria between 1915 and 1918. The Armenians were intentionally marched to death, and a number were attacked by Ottoman brigands. While the exact number of deaths is unknown, the International Association of Genocide Scholars estimates around 1.5 million. The government of Turkey continues to deny to the present day, arguing that those who died were victims of interethnic fighting, famine, or disease during World War I. These claims are rejected by most historians. The reason they don't say all historians is because there are Turkish historians that also agree that with Turkey's side of the rejection, right? But no, you don't get to deny that, bro. You do not get to deny that. Other ethnic groups were similarly attacked by the Ottoman Empire during this period, including Assyrians and Greeks. Some scholars consider those events to be part of the same policy of extermination. At least 250,000 Assyrian Christians and about half the population, and 350,000 to 750,000 Anatolian and Pontic Greeks were killed between 1915 and 1922. Shit. About 8 million soldiers surrendered and were held in POW camps during the war. All nations pledged to follow the Hague Conventions on fair treatment of prisoners of war, and the survival rate of POWs was generally much higher than that of combatants at the front. Surprisingly enough, yes, prisoners of war actually fared better than you did if you were on the front lines. Around 25 to 31% of Russian losses as proportion of those captured, wounded, or killed were to prisoner status. For Austria-Hungary, 32%, for Italy, 26%, for France, 12%, for Germany, 9%, and for Britain, 7%. Prisoners of the Allied armies totaled about 1.4 million, not including Russia, which lost 2.5 to 3.5 million soldiers as prisoners. From Central Powers, about 3.3 million soldiers became prisoners, most of them surrendering to Russians. Yep, got put in the gulag. Shit. And one more thing to kind of top this off, finish off the old streamage, right? Because we're winding down to the prelude before we get into the actual events of the war, some of the deeper details of shit, right? Going over some of the stats. Now we're at the propaganda. At least what would be considered, I guess, positive propaganda, right? Because it's like the whole Uncle Sam picture where he's pointing at the fucking, pointing at you and he's like, I want you for U.S. Army, right? That's a U.S. Army recruiting poster from 1917. Like, positive propaganda. Interesting. I wouldn't consider it positive propaganda, but, I mean, I don't consider propaganda to be positive or negative. It's propaganda. That's what it is. It's neither positive nor negative. It just is what it is. Allied personnel was around 42,928,000, while Central personnel was near 25,248,000. British soldiers of the war were initially volunteers, but were increasingly conscripted. For those of you that don't know what conscription is also known as the draft in American English, is the practice in which compulsory enlistment and or international service, mainly in the military service, is enforced by law. Conscription dates back to antiquity, and it continues in some countries to the present day under various names. The modern system of near-universal national conscription for young men dates to the French Revolution in the 1790s, where it became the basis of a very large and powerful military. Most European nations later copied the system in peacetime so that men at a certain age would serve 1 to 8 years on active duty and then transfer into the reserve force. So that's conscription. Surviving veterans returned home often found they could discuss their experiences only among themselves. So formed veterans associations or legions. We can get into that. There's a lot of people that are pissed off at the VA for a lot of reasons. It's very controversial. Wouldn't be hard to say that shit's been co-opted by some kind of, I don't know, monetary incentive. It's not doing the same as it was intended to in the beginning. I don't think. But nonetheless, conscription was common in most European countries. However, it was controversial in English-speaking countries. Wonder why. It was especially unpopular among minority ethnicities, especially in Irish Catholics in Ireland, Australia, and French Catholics in Canada. Well, yeah, of course Ireland and Canada are going to be pissed because the UK is going to use them first. In the U.S., conscription began in 1917 and was generally well received, with few pockets of opposition in isolated rural areas. The administration decided to rely primarily on conscription rather than voluntary enlistment to raise military manpower after only 73,000 volunteers enlisted out of the initial 1 million target in the first 6 weeks of the war. Yeah. It was hard to get people to sign up for this one over here in the US, man. It was hard. They got 73,000 out of 1 million. Was that like 7.3% or some shit like that? Like, fuck, dude. Damn. Military and civilian observers from every major power closely followed the course of the war. It was very well televised, and like fucking every major news organization was putting out daily information. Some of it accurate, a lot of it propagandized, but many were able to report on events from perspectives somewhat akin to modern embedded positions within opposing land and naval forces, right? However, what they were allowed to show wasn't always 100% accurate. I mean, the media has always done clip jobs. How else are you supposed to fucking justify going to war? Gotta make the other side look evil. Gotta hit people right in the feels for the propaganda to work. It's the only way it does work. Otherwise, it's not effective propaganda. It's just not. However, that wraps up the prelude, which means the next episode of Battle Tactics and War Strategies World War I, we will be getting into some of the actual war. And it won't just be a slideshow. There'll be all kinds of fucking crazy shit going on. Gotta pull all that content. It's gonna be a good fucking time. But as for this stream, I knew it was gonna be a shorter one this evening. Again, I apologize. Got shit to do, and it's fucking freezing. For those of you that know, the bunker, right, or my recording studio, is not in my house or attached to my house. While it is on my property, it is not in my house. So it's fucking cold in here. It's like 22 degrees outside right now or some shit. And my one little teeny heater I got in here is not doing the trick. So, gonna have to go ahead and end it here, guys. We'll pick this up again either tomorrow, Tuesday, or technically today, right? Tuesday night, or Wednesday night, depending on how things work out during the day. We'll see. See what happens. Hopefully I can bring more to you tomorrow. That being said, I hope you all out there have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Wherever you're at in the world, enjoy your time, because it may be limited. You never know what could happen. Go to sleep one night, think you're having a nice little dream. All of a sudden, giant flood washes away your entire civilization, just completely wiped out. Nothing left. No land masses, just flooded earth. All gone. It's just all gone. You didn't get to wake up. Now, obviously that's a fucking infinitely small possibility, but still a possibility nonetheless. So enjoy your time, because you don't know how limited it is. As for me, and your time with me, it has come to an end. I will catch y'all next time. Deuces.
just wish he knew. I just wish he knew.